You are watching the Fayetteville Government Channel. Up next, full coverage of the latest meeting of the Telecommunications Board. The Telecommunications Board is composed of citizen volunteers and meets on the third Thursday of each month. This board advises the City Council regarding telecommunications issues and assists city staff with the administration of the city's public access, education, and government television channels. And now, the Telecommunications Board.
I'll go ahead and call the March 21st, 2013 meeting of the City Fayetteville Telecommunications Board to order. We'll go through the roll call. Pennington's here. Mr. Smith? Here. Mr. Shepard? Here. Mr. Goggins may join us later. Mr. Spencer texted me and said that he would not be joining us tonight. Mr. Spearman? Here. Mr. Ehrig? Here. We also have Mr. Giesler and Mr. Robinson with us. We'll move into approval of our meeting minutes from January. Would entertain any, February, sorry.
Yeah.
In the wrong one.
Get in the right.
Move to accept the minutes as
I thought they were very well done and covered things in detail. Good job.
Very detailed. On motion by Mr. Spearman and second by Mr. Smith, all those in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed, no. The ayes have it. Move into approval of our meeting agenda for March. Motions, changes, additions, or deletions?
Move it be approved.
On motion by Mr. Smith and second by Mr. Spearman to approve the agenda. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, no. The ayes have it. We'll move into reports. First up, Director of Media Services, Mr. Giesler.
Thank you, gentlemen. Welcome, and thanks for being here tonight. Weather's kind of not happy out there, but we'll get through this. Jump right in. Looking at viewership numbers for the government channel. One of the things that I created, and I'll keep track of all through the year, is the spreadsheet that you can see that shows all the months across the top and the numbers of from our two different video on demand services. Now, as you remember, we can only measure video on demand viewership because we can't get any numbers from Cox or AT&T about who's looking at the channel. So from that perspective, we can see that in the month of January, we had a total of 2,651 people view our programming, either a meeting or a non-meeting piece of video. And in February, it went up a little bit, 2,894. And both services, YouTube and Granicus, went up a little bit from January to February. But I'll keep track of that, and that way we can track it all through the year and see if we can't maybe identify some patterns or see if some of our other efforts are being more successful or less successful. One of the things that I would like to point out that we did find really interesting is in last month's YouTube viewership and the top 10 videos, we started an effort to communicate to the public more about the availability of our video programming, especially on YouTube. So anytime we release a new program, whether it's a Trail Etiquette or a Mayor's Corner or anything like that, we also send out a press release. And that press release goes out to the standard people that get that from the city clerk's office. We did that for the video How to Drive a Roundabout, and it knocked Today in America out of the top place for top 10 videos on YouTube. We also did the same thing for the Trail Etiquette and Safety video, and that's number 1 and number 2. We saw a real significant bump in the viewership on those programs. How to Drive a Roundabout was the most watched video on YouTube in February, 464 views. So we feel like that's a real good indication that we're getting the message out there and people are finding it useful.
Also point out that Mr. Shepard was number 8 with a bullet.
Well, there you go.
Volunteer spotlight.
Volunteer spotlight.
Could we start having one like how to stop at a stop sign?
I could put that in the production pipeline.
It would be worthwhile.
Not to, I do want to just take just a moment here, something that Mr. Spearman just did. Gentlemen, if you would please, if you'll notice, we don't have the gooseneck mics on these tables anymore. We've replaced them with microphones that are very low profile, but they're also sit right on the table. So if we beat on the tables, it's really going to come through on the audio.
Sorry.
It means clapping is great. We like clapping. So if you keep that in mind, I appreciate it. So a total of 2,132 views on YouTube, and 4 more subscribers for that channel. And the Granicus, as you know, Granicus is our meeting videos only. And as you can look at the top 10 videos on that, the February 5th City Council meeting was very viewed a significant number of times, over 100 times. So it's interesting to see different programs and when they're viewed. And if you'll look at the total viewers report, you can see that on the 12th of February, there was a big spike in viewership on that day. And I would suspect that that had to do with contributing to the 107 of the City Council meeting from February 5th. But this gives it just kind of a picture. We had 762 total views of video programs on Granicus from the month of February, and like I said, actually the top 3 videos were City Council meetings, either the meeting or an agenda session. So I think that's a great indication that we are serving our viewers and giving them what they want.
I think you've answered this before in the negative, but do you have any way of measuring how many people are streaming live during the council meeting?
At this point in time, we don't, but I'm hoping to be able to start getting those metrics soon off of the upgraded equipment that we have from Granicus. So we're going to be looking at getting those metrics as well.
My suspicion is it's probably more than watch it in the can, but I don't know.
That'll be real interesting to see what we can find out from that. We're also hoping to be able to differentiate at that time, once we can get into those new reports. If we can see those, I'm hoping to also be able to differentiate between public viewers and people that are inside the city, in other words, staff members that would be watching those. And so we could differentiate that. And I think that'll be helpful as well. Part of that is going to be dependent on our transition to the new Legistar system as that project moves forward. In terms of what's going on at the television center itself, things are just chugging along. We're working on, we've done a lot of building renovations for the public areas and the control rooms and the studio work and stuff like that. And the government channel and the city staff have been essentially put off in terms of their space for the last 2-3 years. So this year I told the staff that that we would take a part of our budget and put it aside to do some renovations in their space. So their space is getting new carpet, a little bit of new paint on the walls, some work surface improvements for them that's going to help them be more productive and more ergonomic. So we're doing a little bit of work on that. Carpet goes in next Wednesday, and so we'll have the day blocked off for that, and that's going to just help their workspace be a nicer space for them. Other than that, the public production areas are going along very well. We recently introduced, well, I say recently, a month and a half ago, Adobe Elements. Adobe Premiere Elements is an editing software choice on our public editing computers in addition to Final Cut Pro, and it's been very, very well received by the people that are training. We also have updated all of our field production equipment. We now have 2 full setups for people that are taking the advanced field production classes, and also 2 full setups to check out for people that have just taken the basic field production. And as the usage on those, as we see those numbers increase, we have in the budget to get a 3rd full setup when we need it. Anything else about the television center that you can think of? Oh, one of the things we are going to do is actually get, we've had a really good, very, very reasonable quote to spend less than $100 to get the hours of operation done on the door as a vinyl cling. And that's going to look really nice there. And the other thing that we've also got a quote for, we have brochures for public access television, and since January 1st, we haven't been able to distribute those because those were printed a year or so ago and they have the wrong hours. But we got a good quote for some stickers to go on the back of them and have the new hours. That'll look really good. But those guys will put all those together and we'll start distributing those again. Any questions about the television center or government channel operations, city?
Any complaints other than Sarah Bunch?
None. I mean, we do get those every once in a while. There will be other people that talk about that the audio signal and the video signal having difficulty with a city council meeting or sometimes a planning commission meeting. We are working on trying to track down the technical cause of that. Kind of, I guess the best way to describe it is a signal fade. It starts getting staticky and kind of snowy in the video, and that's what it looks like. And so we're doing our best to figure out where that's occurring and get that fixed as fast as possible.
Well, I want to, if I may, say it's good that the agendas started staying on there during the meetings.
Yeah.
And that's an improvement. Although I tried to record one to my old computer, which it always did before, but I'm not sure of the new change, and on my new computer I couldn't find it either, how you tell it to download the thing to your computer from Granicus when you're watching the live meeting. I haven't tried it with the backup,
Okay.
archived, but that's a nice thing for people that want to save them, and you don't have to make them a DVD.
Right.
They don't have to come ask for it and all that. Although, and the other thing, sometimes when I stay home and watch meetings that are live, I will put on YouTube, on Facebook, the link to see it on Granicus. And people have commented, thanks for posting that afterwards and stuff like that, but I don't know if that counts as one hit on Granicus or somehow, but because it's pulling it that way, it doesn't, or something like that. I have no idea.
It would count if they use that link to go to the Access Fayetteville site and pull it from the Granicus view page. It would count. So that would be good.
If we click on it, then it should count.
Yeah, it should take them over there. And then in terms of, just to follow up, with this technical problem that we've been having, if you're watching it live, you may experience some quality issues on the video and audio. We do have, after the meeting, and we did it for this last meeting, we have a clean copy of that, a clean recording of the meeting, and then we upload that to Granicus in replace of the one that may be there that's having some difficulty. So we do have a clean copy available for people to watch after the meeting.
I'm not sure I mentioned it in this meeting before, but at least as of this past week, I think there is a period in maybe every meeting shot on the second floor that there's a lot of buzzing sound comes in.
That's what I've just been talking about.
That was what
Yeah, that's what I'm talking about.
It was a problem, yeah.
Yes, sir.
So was there an explanation what was going on when that?
Our troubleshooting basically has tracked it down to somewhere in the fiber optic link between our video production system in room 219 and our equipment in the telecast equipment in the television center. The government channel staff does not have the tools or the training to troubleshoot fiber optic connections. Right. That's done by our information technology division. So we have put in work order requests to IT for have them troubleshoot that fiber optic connection. They're the ones who installed it originally. They have the tools and the training to do that. So we're waiting for them to troubleshoot that that connection and to help us try to alleviate that. Part of the problem with that is it's intermittent, and so, you know, as you well know, it's difficult sometimes to troubleshoot an intermittent problem and find out really what is the cause, but they're working on it. We're going to get that fixed as soon as possible. It's having a negative effect on our work productivity and, you know, the viewership and everything, so.
I wasn't certain whether it was, somehow it would occur at a certain time. And if there was a theory.
It's always the time that you want to see it.
Well, I mean, just in that
Yeah.
little area.
It really was for Sarah. She was
I
watching
imagine
the,
so, I know.
it
It's,
was- She said it was during the nominating committee report.
Oh.
She was waiting to hear if she'd been reappointed to planning commission. She said
Oh,
it
no.
cut out, and it came back when they were done.
oh, no. Well, we continue to try to find out what that situation is and get it corrected. And we just ask for everyone's patience on that. Sometimes these things can be significantly challenging.
That's great.
Is IT generally responsive to your request, or they?
Generally, but just like many other city divisions, they are understaffed and overworked, and so we try to, get stuff fit in with them as best we can. So I've also, the administration is aware of what our assessment is of the issue. So we're hoping that it will get dealt with soon.
Any other questions? If not, we'll move into the public access provider report. Mr. Robinson.
Thank you very much. Good evening, gentlemen. I want to start off by expressing my gratitude to Mr. Smith and Mr. Geisler for diagnosing the fact that I had sent out the wrong draft of the report and was able to correct that. But even this draft did not make it without its mistakes. And I just want to quickly correct on the first page.
Wow.
The total class participants for February 2013 was 17, not 9, for a year-to-date total of 36, not 28. I apologize for that, and that's reflected in the charts below as well. So as far as class and workshop participations go, we are still working a wonderful curve of exceeding last year by far. I think very much thanks to the expanded contract and the expanded capabilities that we are able to offer as a result. So we ended up with great numbers as far as people that we're training. We have a steady stream of people who are coming in who are still fresh faces. And they are still very much sticking to the programs. People who take orientation take another class as well, and then they end up taking other classes as well. So it's very exciting to see them continue to do that. So with training, we've had great traffic this month. In February, we had great traffic. And we had a wonderful workshop about getting the winning shot about sports photography. And the workshops are in the process of being post-produced and will be telecast, so people will be able to enjoy those over the course of the year, even if they were not able to attend. So yes, training was wonderful. Certification also going very well. Like I said, people who are taking the classes are becoming candidate producers, and then with the certification process, that is the one where we're really hoping to get people through the advanced tracks, but then also get more material submitted for production activity, which is the next thing that I'm looking forward to talking about. The one thing that we have seen go significantly down is short takes participations. And I have been personally reaching out extensively on social media, looking for people who would be interested in expressing their opinions, people who have messages that they want to communicate to the community. I have been looking for those sorts of people. So it would be wonderful if we had more people in the community coming in. The time slots are very accessible, and we have this wonderful resource available. And it's just surprising to me that, especially with so many people working with so many great causes, people who want to educate the community about things that they feel passionate about, do not take advantage of this opportunity more than they certainly are welcome to. So I am continuing to reach out to, especially, for instance, I have started posting weekly on the page for our friends at the Omni Center for Peace, letting them know that Short Takes is happening today, letting them know the day that it's happening, what time it's happening, trying to get them to come take advantage of this resource that's available. And then also to the musical community and several other communities. We have had several people who have grabbed a hold of it, but I still feel like it is an underused resource, and would very much enjoy having more people come take advantage of it.
Farmers market's about to start.
Yes,
Be a good place.
absolutely. As I understand, that was successful in the past. So Short Takes numbers are the numbers that are down. As far as equipment utilization goes, I think it's a very interesting reflection in that our camera checkouts are up compared to last year, but our editing bay time is down. And I believe that to be a result of several things, but the main thing being Adobe Elements, the software that we are teaching now, is available for about $120. So I believe that in the future, now that we have a digital medium, and having to digitize tape is no longer a boundary for people who are utilizing the equipment. They can utilize the digital equipment and then go home and offload the footage on their computers digitally, and then edit at home on the very accessible software that they have been trained on. So we're thrilled to be offering them the training so that they're able to implement that at home. But I believe that we will continue to see an increase in camera checkouts, but I believe we'll see kind of a steady usership of the editing base, because people will have their own capabilities to do that. And then the studio use is also up. Wonderful to have the resource, gorgeous cameras, gorgeous pictures, still have the wow factor. Every time we bring someone in, they go, wow, that's amazing. So it's really wonderful to have the studio facility up and running again. So all in all, we had a successful month. The other thing, as far as programming goes, you notice we have more outside programming than inside programming, and that's another ratio that I would like to aggressively pursue changing. I would like to see more inside programming from the successful students that we have. We have so many successful students coming through the doors that we're hoping that translates into new, fresh programming for the channel. So we are encouraging them to pursue that and hoping that grows.
Two things. First, very impressive work, and congratulations to you and your staff on this. I'm glad to see the numbers coming up, and especially the number of candidate producers and certified producers is just amazing compared to what it was a couple of years ago. Two experiences that I'd like to share and thank you for is yesterday I took the course in Adobe Premiere editing, and it is much more geezer friendly and for those of us over 30 I think it has removed the stumbling block to my certification, and I think it also reflects favorably on sort of the philosophy of outreach to everyday folks instead of people with professional skills. So I'm glad you have that, and it's also available online for $62.
Wow.
Which is pretty good.
Yeah.
The other is there were a number of people that were having difficulty with the orientation and field training because they were on Monday almost exclusively. And JR scheduled a special meeting to accommodate those folks, and really appreciate that.
It's our pleasure. Thank you for referring students to us. We appreciate it.
Well, you didn't say this, Steve, but if I may, Mr. Chairman, I've been down there a few times and got to listen from my seat in the lobby, and we've got really professional sounding trainers there. So classes sound very excited, interfacing with the, the process and asking good questions. So I think we're very fortunate to have the people we do providing that training.
Thank you very much. I will relay that to the guys.
No, swell their heads.
Tell them to watch it online.
Y'all really want to watch that meeting?
Any other questions? All right, thanks. We'll move on to new business. Discussion of some terrible legislation. I don't know who wants to take the lead on this. Fritz?
Well, Mr. Chairman, I would be happy to. I thought it appropriate for us to have somewhat of a discussion of what some of the impacts may be of what's now called Act 276. It was Senate Bill 101. And as last month, we had several people here, and this board expressed its significant opposition to that, as well as the city staff and the city council, all to no avail, unfortunately. It was passed. It became Act 276, and it will go into effect in approximately less than 90 days now. Some of the impacts that we might see here in Fayetteville, and in all of these, the impact that we can discuss this evening will be the option of Cox Communications or any other video service provider that wants to operate in the city of Fayetteville. It will be their option, and that's probably the most significant impact of this legislation, is that the city no longer has control over who can operate a video service, i.e. cable operation in the city. Then we have some other significant impacts that we might see. But if Cox Communications decides, and I'm going to refer to Cox because they're the ones who are going to be most affected by this legislation. And we would see the most change from their operation in the city based on this legislation. But if they decide to go forward and apply for the proper documentation from the state and the Secretary of State's office, once that is issued, which we have no choice over, the agreement that the City of Fayetteville holds with Cox Communications that now governs how Cox basically operates their cable system in the city will become null and void. And at that point, all the provisions of the bill will kick in, and Cox will become essentially their own control. Unfortunately, that has been one of the purviews of this board, is to help the citizens keep an eye on the cable operators, and that goes away. So that's another impact that we will unfortunately.
Excuse me, let me suggest that I don't think that it's any less our responsibility to keep an eye on. And that's one reason for urging the public to report to the station and to the Telecom board directly in these meetings their problems with things. And I don't think that goes away because Cox may have more control and this feeling of, being free to do whatever they choose. So I think that part of this board's activity should not be lessened. We never had control of the cable in recent years. It went away. People weren't coming in to report. They ignored or said no, they couldn't be here when we were asking AT&T and Cox to please come in and talk with us about a problem or something. But as far as getting out the public's problems and giving them a place to air it, this is the venue, as they say.
I disagree with that. I think to pretend that we have any recourse against them or any ability to get them to correct consumer problems or anything else would be a sham, and we should encourage citizens to do the short takes and reach out directly to the public rather than coming here and making complaint that we have no response to. And all that does is waste their time and ours, and I think they should go directly to short takes because the Secretary of State will have no control over it, and the city will have no control over it, and Cox will do whatever it wants to.
And I, as staff, have been directed to refer members of the public who have issue with cable operator, video service operators, to contact their state legislators because we have no recourse. We could be, the only thing that I would be able to do as a staff member is tell someone who had called me, I'm sorry, there's nothing I can do. However, you know, contact your state legislator and your state representative because they can change the bill. They can change the law.
Well, I'd also point out and thank Representative Whitaker and Representative Leding for voting against it, although neither of them spoke against it. But all of the other representatives of Fayetteville voted for this, so you might give them their home phone number.
But I do want to say that, again, as staff, I have been directed to refer people to their state legislator for those kinds of things.
I understand.
As unfortunate as that is, we feel like that is one of the very unfortunate and significantly negative impacts of this legislation. I was asked to develop a preliminary assessment of the impact of the legislation for the administration. So several of the things that I listed in that initial impact was that there are 4 discrete access channels on Cox Communications System. That is our public access channel, our government channel, our education channel, which is utilized exclusively by Fayetteville Public Schools, and the University of Arkansas Television, UATV. One of the things that has come out with this legislation as it went through the legislature, the Senate and the House of Representatives, was that while the act itself refers to the PEG channels that we know of, public education and government, which we have 3, the city has 3, the argument seemed to be moving towards, and the people that were involved in this seemed to be moving how they referred to these channels to calling them access channels. Well, Little Rock has 6. And if you want to count UATV, at which the companies are going to count, they're going to count it as an access channel. According to the legislation, Cox will only have to provide us with 3 PEG channels. Does UATV count as a PEG channel? Which one of the 2 organizations counts? If Cox wants to come in and say, you have 4 access channels now, we're only going to have to provide you with 3, who's going to make the cut? We don't know. That's something that's out there that we're not sure of. That's one of the things that we enumerated.
One thing on that, though, Mr. Foley made that deal for that separate independent operating channel and made it clear 4 years ago to me personally, he didn't want anything to do with the city's channels or the Telecom board or any of that. He wanted it to be his deal over there. So because the UA is in its powerful position, appropriately in many ways, then that might obviate that threat that you just described. I hope it does.
I'm hoping that that's the way it can go if Cox decides that they're not going to provide more than the 3 channels that they would be required to provide. So we'll have to wait and see where that goes. Right now, based on our agreement with Cox, they're required to provide cable service at all city-owned facilities and all the facilities owned by the Fayetteville Public School System at no cost. Now, it's a basic starter level, it's the basic level of service, but they're required to do that at no cost. That could go away. And then the city would have to pay for whatever cable service they would deem to be necessary to provide for the staff. I can tell you that if we all remember when the channel was moved to the digital spectrum, and then you had to have a digital converter box to receive it, when we went to Cox and we said we need 17, because that's how many different cable outlets we had that were being serviced. And so we still have 17 in service, and that's a significant number of cable outlets that we'd have to decide, are we going to keep them live or not, if they decide they want to start charging us for it. Have no clue, I have no idea how many outlets that the school system uses. But I also know it's an educational tool, so we don't know where that could go. That will be something for the Fayetteville Public School to deal with directly with Cox and AT&T over. According to the legislation, all the equipment that's required to encode the video and audio for our PEG channels, at this point in time, it is owned and managed and taken care of by Cox. AT&T's equipment we own. AT&T provided us that equipment at the initiation of that service. 90 days later, the ownership of it reverted to the city, and we are responsible for it. But Cox has always owned and maintained their own encoding equipment. It sits in our rack down there in our engineering room, and we put video and audio into it, and it turns those signals into digital signals that go to their head end. They could make us buy that. They could require us to pay for that equipment. They could also, we also have a signal that is transported from Washington County Courthouse to the television center, which all the equipment that's associated with that is owned and maintained by Cox. They don't charge us for that. They don't charge us for the bandwidth. They don't charge us for transporting that signal. And that's what we use to telecast the Washington County Quorum Court meetings live on the government channel. So that could we could be charged for that if they so choose. Another aspect of the bill or the legislation is that it says in here that the video service provider can require that all the PEG channels originate from one point. Well, what does that mean? Well, right now, 2 of our channels originate from our television center. Another channel originates from Fayetteville Public Schools in their television facility. And if we want to include the UATV channel, that originates over there. At the very least, if we keep our 3 channels, public access, our government channel, and FPS, we may be required to figure out how to get the public schools telecast signal from their facility to our facility and then combine it to go to Cox's head end, one point of origin for the 3 channels. So that's another thing that could happen. So there are a lot of different impacts. For us technically and for the operations of our channels, it's going to take some time to figure out to do a full analysis. This does not include the impact of their use of the rights of way, the loss of local control. Some of these things are going to be very difficult to speculate as to how they may finally, what we might be finally seeing on some of that stuff. But probably more than anything that I'm concerned about is that in a few years, probably definitely less than 10 and maybe less than 7, we're going to see these companies, AT&T, Cox, or whoever else may have entered Fayetteville by that time, no longer consider themselves to be video service providers. they will do what they need to do from a technical perspective and provide their service in a way to where they will be able to say, we're an internet service provider, we're not a video service provider. And once they do that, then they're not under any of the aspects of this legislation, and that is a concern.
Well, I think it's also a concern that to the city, because the franchise fees are based on the video services and subscribers, and internet specifically exempted. So I think it would be in the city's interest to look at alternative ways of pricing access to rights of way. I don't know what they do with, say, SWEPCO, if they pay it's not based on the amount of kilowatts they're shipping over the line. But look perhaps at a different business model for the city for pricing the use of the rights of way to internet providing companies.
We have never been able, and I don't know where the state law stands, and I'd have to consult with the city attorney on that, but we've never collected any, that I know of, we've never collected any fees for for internet service.
Right. But if Cox goes and takes their, what's now on cable and moves it to internet protocol, and the continuing rate of dropping of landlines and going to cell phones, the city's return on the use of the right-of-ways is going to shrink considerably.
Very much.
And that's something they probably need to give some thought to on figuring out a new business model for charging for use of the rights-of-way.
I think you hit on a real good point there, in that these are very old business models. They're based on things that don't exist anymore, or things that have evolved into such a way that they're not adequate anymore. So to be able to look at somebody and say, okay, you use our right-of-way at this amount of our right-of-way, X number of miles of it, I don't care what you provide over that wire, you're putting that wire in our rights-of-way, and we need to be compensated for it. And that's one of the things that I really had, I had a real issue with this particular legislation, is it still bases it on gross revenue of a service that's provided, not how much of the rights-of-way are being used. So at this point in time, and I have brought some of these things to the attention of the administration, and I will definitely also communicate to them that this board has those same concerns and is going to encourage them to look at alternatives to that.
I don't know which department of city government would be responsible to looking at what other cities are doing on that, but whoever it is ought to give it some thought.
I hope so. Yeah.
You know, it's also amazing to think about the access issue. There may be parts of town where Cox or others say it's not, we don't have to cover that area, you know?
And they can unilaterally just discontinue service in an area.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's something that we call redlining, and the only thing that the legislation requires is that the area that they serve is contiguous. So they can't take like a piece up here and then a separate piece down here, but they certainly can make that line zigzag around wherever they want, and all they have to do is draw out the map and send it to the Secretary of State and say, this is the area that we're going to service, and that'll be it.
Well, AT&T still doesn't have U-verse all over town.
No?
And
But they do have telephone service all over town. I mean,
Yes,
they're
they do.
required to have universal service. Cable companies no longer are.
Right. We were able to require them to provide a universal service, but now we know we no longer have that capability. And again, this goes back to those changing business models where, you know, at one time the phone company only provided telephone service on those wires, and that's all they provided. The cable company only provided television on those wires, and that's all they provided. So that was, now they do everything: phone, internet, cable. Who knows what's going to come down the pipe next, so to speak.
Thank you. Gloom and doom.
Great way to end the meeting.
Well, on a hopeful note, I can say, I personally, as the person who is working as the service provider, I work with a level of comfort knowing that Mr. Giesler has the level of understanding and leadership that he does on this topic. It's very informative, and I think bodes well for Fayetteville and bodes well for the future of the television center, that we have someone who is willing to spend the time and the effort to educate himself and make us aware of all of the nuances of this very complicated bill.
I thank you, Dan. Dan and I have had lots of conversations about this, so we can beat on the table. And I will share this preliminary, is that looking at what some of the impacts can be, is we've already started looking at how we need to be positioning the operations of the television center and the services that we provide for the residents of Fayetteville, so whatever impact we may experience is minimized, and our level of service, we maintain our level of service, because that to us is what, for us, that's the most important thing, is how do we maintain those channels of communication, how do we maintain those services and maintain that capability that we've been able to provide for 20 plus, 30 plus years to the residents of this city. So we just started talking about it because it just got passed, but hopefully we'll have more and more stuff to share with this board and with the public in the coming months and years to come.
All right. Gloom and doom for now.
Yeah.
Any other reports or announcements? Not, I'd entertain a motion to adjourn.
I want to make an motion to adjourn.
Second.
On motion by Mr. Aragon, second by Mr. Spearman. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. The ayes have it. Meeting's adjourned.